Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Today, inshallah, we are going to present the methodology and the literature review for the paper which we are working on, which is counteracting attack from malicious end hosts in software-defined networks. The topics we are going to cover, inshallah, in this presentation are the introduction, the best work paper, literature review, methodologies, conclusion, and the references. First of all, in the introduction, we are going to speak in public about the SDN and its architecture. Due to its programmable simplicity, software-defined networks are considered one of the most promising technologies for computer network. By using the SDN architecture, you can easily solve many of the security problems of your existing network. However, SDN security vulnerabilities still exist. Security is a major concern of researchers and companies in the implementation of SDN. Unfortunately, if this problem is not addressed properly, SDN has a few security issues that have a little impact on network operations. Now, controllers play an important role in SDN networks, and communication are generally subject to other type of attacks. SDN controller malicious attacks can paralyze the entire network. Now, in the base work paper, the researcher designed a security architecture which can control and make changes and dynamic configuration on the security policies to improve the SDN security and to protect the controller from the malicious end host attacks in the SDN. Now I'm going to talk about the papers which they used, and they spoke about it in the paper. We have many papers. I make a summary for this one. I will talk about the author and the year of this paper. Then I will mention the title of this paper. Then I will make a summary for the protocols and the methods they used in their design or their proposed architecture. And finally, I will speak about the advantages and the strong points for each solution. So let's start. The first one, it was for Lee and Chen, and it was proposed and it was published in 2017 with the title, it's holding the security assessment framework. Its name was Delta. So Delta is a security assessment framework for software-defined networks. In this paper, they designed a Delta tool with a protocol-aware fuzzing model for assessment several attacks against SDN. The main point or the advantage for this paper that the design system identified many attacks. Some of them were unknown on different SDN controllers. In the second paper, which is for Shin and Fong, and it was published in 2012 with the title A Security Enforcement Kernel for OpenFlow Networks. In this paper, they create a new security policies in the control panel to be used in security mechanisms in the switches in the data plane. The advantage of this paper is security enforcement to secure the controller from northbound applications successfully counteracted the attacks which coming from the malicious end host connected to the switches. In the third paper, we have the authors, BF, Amidon, and Sneaker, and it was published in 2009 with the title Extending Network into the Virtualization Layer. The protocol or the method they used, they suggested OpenFlow-based vSwitch for connecting VMs hosted on VMM. Currently, all the FMMs support such OpenFlow virtual switches. The advantages of this paper, in this technique, it makes use of most of the security monitoring of the VMs. The fourth paper, it was an extending for this one, with the same title, because they extended their work in another paper, and it was published in 2017 with the same title, Extending Network into the Virtualization Layer. In this paper, or the future work which they spoke about it in the previous, they improved it. So the proposed architecture used to extract the internal state of the VMs in the process level and can be at the system call level. Then it will validate the state to detect and prevent the attacks. The advantages in this paper, it makes use of SS components in the physical switches and monitor control plane, and data plane communication coming the end host. Communication can be both physical and virtual. In paper number 5, which was published in 2013 for the authors Shen and Forrest, with the title of Avant-Garde, Scalable and Vigilant Switches Flow Management in Software-Defined Networks. They proposed an architecture in this paper used to switch and validate the new flows coming from end host, then migrating the limited flows to the destination. Now, the advantages was that the architecture can deal with several attacks like rootkits, malicious injections, and many specific zero attacks. It's also built to be able to identify malicious process at a fine granular level. And the second last paper, it was for Shen, 2014, with the, it was a robust server, secure and high performance network operating system. The protocols or the technique they used in this paper for sandboxing that network apps to detect the common failures of application from the attacking the SDN controller. The advantages in this paper, it was that the technique can used with the security solution for improving the resilience of the controller in SDN operations. The last paper, it was for Wang in 2015, that the first step with the title is First Step Toward Network Security Virtualization from Concept to Prototype. So in this paper, they proposed a technique for enhancing the security by making use of the SDN controller to dynamically route the flows through the static security devices for detecting attacks. The advantages they achieved from this prototype, the attacks can be detected before the flow are established by controller. However, the controller, and this one is one of their vulnerabilities, that the controller itself can be vulnerable to attacks from the malicious and host devices in the network devices which process in a traffic. Now, Iman.
Yes. Now the researchers follow this methodology to implement the proposed solution. They start with assumption and pre-processing. Then they do the prototype setup and implementation. After that, the simulation for this security application, which is SMA. And the last thing is result and discussion. Now, the first step is assumption and pre-processing. The researchers assume that there is a single consistent SDN controller pre-domain, which the controller is secure and entrusted by the entities within the network. In case the SDN controller is compromised, then the network space and all entities that domain are compromised. The second thing they considered also in SMA that the malicious attacks on the switches come from malicious end host from the network traffic, and they assumed that the hardware of the switches is safe and trusted. The last thing they assumed that the switches support TLS and SSL, and that they are enabled supporting secure communication between the switches and the controller. Now, the second step in their work, that they set up the prototype and do the implementation. They implement the prototype for security solution with ONOS controller with SMA. And in this prototype, the client and server application hosted on both virtual and physical host, and with virtual and physical switches connected to the end host. Now, the third step for their work, they do the simulation for the solution SMA. They simulated the SDN domain using Minent and ONOS running on Oracle Virtual Machine Box. and they added a bridge mode Ethernet adapter to the virtual machines running in the virtual machine box to create a channel between the VM and Minant VM. Also, the activated SMA and the ONOS SDN controller for updating, modifying, and read the stored XML policies. They use JavaDOM XML parser module. The last thing for analysis and discussion results, they use JProfiler to analyze the CPU load and performance. So the first thing they analyze the load and performance of the CPU. The second thing, they measure the heap memory usage for the system by monitoring tool in OVS. Also, they focused on 4 things to analyze the system. The first thing is finding, detecting attacks using state validation. Second thing, detecting attacks using traffic validation, defending unpatched system, and the last thing is performance analysis using the prototype. Yeah. To conclude, this paper has proposed a technique for securing SDN infrastructure, which is SMA, by developing a security solution that can be used to detect and prevent attacks from malicious end hosts in SDN. And the domain-wide network visibility of the SDN controller enables the SMA to achieve dynamic management of the security policies, and the enforcement of security policies in the data plan is tailored to the functionality available in the network switches and devices, making the proposed security solution practical. And this is the last thing, the references which Mariam talks about in the related work. Yeah, thank you.